I don't know where to start. Maybe that's the first sign that what I'm about to say has been festering inside me for too long, growing heavier each year. Some men go to a priest when their conscience is burning. Others pour it out in a drunken haze to a stranger at a bar. Me, I'm writing it all down, because if I don't, I'm afraid I'll drown in my own silence. My name isn't important. What matters is that I was 35 when everything began to unravel. Though looking back, the threads had been fraying for years. I was married to Anna. We'd been together almost a decade. She was the sort of woman people call solid, dependable, kind, patient, a natural caretaker. She taught literature at a secondary school and had that quiet grace about her, the kind you only notice when it's gone. We had built a life together that, on paper, looked enviable. A modest house in the suburbs, stable jobs, 2 cars in the driveway, no children. Something that had once been a conscious choice, though by our mid-30s, it had turned into a sore spot neither of us addressed anymore. We still laughed sometimes, still shared dinners and TV shows, but the intimacy, the raw spark that used to pull me to her, had faded like old wallpaper. Comfortable but uninspiring. I should have been content. Most men would have killed for the stability I had. But contentment is a strange beast. It doesn't ask you if you're satisfied. It lulls you into a quiet death of routine. I remember lying awake some nights, Anna's soft breathing beside me, and wondering when exactly I'd stopped feeling alive. And then there was her. Her name was Julia. She worked in the same office building as me, though for a different company on the floor below. I was a marketing manager, buried in deadlines, endless meetings, and the suffocating smell of burnt coffee. She worked in design, freelance, but she often rented a desk in the co-working area we all shared. The first time I noticed her was ridiculous. She was bent over the printer, fighting with a jammed tray, muttering curses under her breath. Her hair fell over her face in loose waves, and she wore a dress that clung to her in a way that made it hard to look away. She glanced up at me, caught my eyes, and instead of being embarrassed, she laughed. "Do you know how to fix this thing?" she asked. "Or should I just set it on fire?" It was nothing, a moment, but it lodged in my chest like a splinter. From then on, we kept crossing paths by the coffee machine in the hallway waiting for the elevator. She had a way of making small talk feel like a secret shared. She asked about my work, my weekends, even my favorite books. Anna used to ask me those things once. I didn't realize how starved I was for curiosity until Julia gave it to me. I told myself it was harmless. A few conversations, a little attention. God knows men are weak for attention. But one afternoon, after a stressful meeting, I found her outside on the balcony, smoking. I don't even smoke, but I joined her, desperate for air. We leaned against the railing, shoulder to shoulder, and I remember her perfume. Something citrusy, sharp and sweet at once. "You look like you want to throw yourself off," she teased. "Tempting," I said, smiling despite myself. That was the first time she touched me. Just a quick pat on the arm, casual, but my skin burned where her hand had been. I went home that night to Anna, who was grading papers on the couch, glasses sliding down her nose. She looked up, smiled faintly, asked about my day, and I lied. I told her it was fine, nothing special. But inside, I was replaying Julia's laugh, Julia's perfume, Julia's hand on my arm. The guilt was subtle at first. A whisper, a warning bell I chose to ignore, because the truth is, guilt feels almost intoxicating when paired with desire. It sharpens everything. The glances, the words, the silences. I started looking forward to work in a way I hadn't in years, just for the chance of bumping into her. A few weeks later, we ended up grabbing lunch together. She insisted it wasn't a big deal, we were just colleagues in the same building, after all. But when we sat in that small cafe across the street, I realized how dangerous it had already become. The way she leaned in when I spoke, the way her eyes lingered on mine, the way I forgot, for nearly an hour, that I was a married man. That night, Anna kissed me goodnight, soft and tired, and I felt like a fraud. Maybe I should have confessed then, told her there was someone new in my head, someone stealing pieces of me that belonged to her. But I didn't. I swallowed it, and in swallowing, I made space for it to grow. That was the beginning. The first steps down a path I knew was forbidden, yet couldn't resist. If this sounds like an excuse, maybe it is. But I promised myself I'd tell the truth here, even the parts that make me hate myself. Because the truth is, I fell in love with Julia before I even touched her. It's strange how easily life splits into before and after. Looking back, I can't pinpoint the exact second when I crossed the line, only the moments that nudged me closer until falling became inevitable. After that first lunch with Julia, things escalated in quiet, almost innocent steps. Coffee breaks turned into long conversations. Conversations turned into inside jokes. Jokes turned into texts late at night, short at first, then longer, deeper, more personal. It wasn't just flirting, though there was plenty of that, veiled enough that I could pretend it was harmless. No, what drew me in was how she made me feel seen. With Anna, I often felt like part of the furniture in our house, useful, reliable, but invisible. Julia looked at me like I was someone worth paying attention to. Every word out of her mouth made me feel younger, sharper, more alive. One evening, I was stuck late at the office, finishing a report. My phone buzzed. Still there? Julia. Yeah, drowning in numbers, I wrote back. A minute later, come downstairs. I'll rescue you. I hesitated, glancing at the time. Anna would be waiting at home, probably with reheated pasta. But I went. Julia was outside, leaning against her car. She grinned when she saw me. You need air. Come on. I got in without asking where we were going. She drove aimlessly through the city, windows down, music low. We ended up by the river, sitting on the hood of her car, watching the water shimmer under the streetlights. You ever feel like you're just sleepwalking through your life? She asked suddenly. I laughed, bitter. All the time. She turned her head to look at me. Our eyes locked, and I felt it, that pull, electric and dangerous. Me too, she whispered. Her hand brushed mine, tentative, testing. And I let it stay there. We didn't kiss that night. Maybe that's why I convinced myself nothing had happened. But when I got home past midnight, smelling faintly of her perfume, Anna looked up from the couch with tired eyes and asked, Long day. Yeah, elite. That was the first lie that felt like a brick in my chest. Weeks passed. Julia and I grew bolder. We started having lunch together almost daily. She teased me about my tie, about the way I always ordered the same sandwich. I'd tease her about her messy handwriting, the doodles she covered her notebooks with. But beneath the laughter, the tension thickened, unspoken yet undeniable. The first kiss happened on a rainy Tuesday. We ducked into a small bookstore near the office to escape the downpour. The smell of paper and dust hung heavy in the air. She picked up a book of poetry, flipped it open, and read a line aloud, her voice soft and intimate. I don't even remember the line anymore. Something about longing, about hunger, but I remember the way her lips moved, the way her eyes flicked to mine after. Before I knew it, I was leaning in. Or maybe she was. It doesn't matter. Our mouths met, tentative at first, then hungrier, like we'd both been starving. My hands trembled. When we finally pulled back, breathing hard, she laughed nervously, pressing her forehead to mine. We shouldn't, she whispered. I know. And then we kissed again. I went home soaked that night, not just from the rain but from guilt. Anna asked me if I'd forgotten my umbrella, and I said yes. I kissed her cheek, the same mouth that had been on Julia's hours earlier, and I hated myself. But I also knew I'd do it again. Once you cross the line, there's no going back. The secrecy becomes its own drug. Every stolen moment with Julia felt sharper, brighter, more intoxicating than anything in my gray, predictable marriage. We found excuses to be alone. Coffee runs that took twice as long. Work discussions that lasted an hour. And then, one Friday evening, when most of the office had cleared out, she pulled me into the empty conference room. The kiss was urgent this time, desperate. Her hands in my hair, mine gripping her waist. We stumbled against the table, knocking over a chair, laughing breathlessly between kisses. Someone could. I started, but she silenced me with her mouth. That was the night we crossed more than one line. I won't dress it up in romance. It was messy, frantic, dangerous. But it was also the most alive I'd felt in years. When it was over, we sat there in the half-dark, panting, half-terrified, half-exhilarated. "I can't believe we did that," she whispered. "Me neither." But I knew deep down that it was only the beginning. At home, Anna noticed changes. She wasn't stupid. I was more distracted, my phone always face down, my mood swinging between guilty tenderness and restless distance. She'd ask if everything was okay, and I'd smile, kiss her forehead, tell her I was just stressed from work. The worst part was that sometimes, in my guilt, I'd overcompensate. I'd bring her flowers, cook dinner, even initiate sex with a desperation that surprised both of us. And for a fleeting moment, it almost felt like we were us again. But even as I touched her, my mind betrayed me, whispering Julia's name. One night, after we'd made love, Anna lay against me, sighing softly. "I miss you," she said. The words gutted me, because she was right. I wasn't there anymore, not fully. Half of me belonged to someone else. I kissed the top of her head, swallowing my confession like poison. "I'm here, Elite." But the truth was, I was already slipping away. Affairs don't stay simple for long. At first, it's just hunger, stolen kisses, frantic touches, the thrill of secrecy. But then the hunger sharpens into something else. Something that gnaws at you even when you're home, sitting at the dinner table with the woman you promised forever to. With Julia, the excitement of those early encounters evolved into something messier. We started carving out entire afternoons for each other, inventing excuses with shameless creativity. "Client meeting," I'd tell Anna. "Design project," Julia would say to her colleagues. In reality, we'd be holed up in a hotel room on the edge of town, wrapped around each other like people who hadn't tasted water in days. It was passion, yes, but also more than that. Afterward, we'd lie tangled in the sheets, talking about everything from childhood memories to our deepest regrets. She told me about her failed engagement, how she'd called it off 2 weeks before the wedding because she realized she didn't love him. I told her about my father's drinking, the way I'd promised myself I'd never become the kind of man who disappointed the people who counted on him. And yet, here I was, disappointing Anna every day with lies. The more time I spent with Julia, the more the contrast ate at me. Anna would ask about my day, her eyes warm but weary, and I'd mumble half-truths while my heart was still buzzing from Julia's touch. She'd fall asleep beside me, and I'd lie awake, wondering how I'd become two people living one life. But passion has a way of blinding you to consequences. The first real crack in the illusion came from jealousy. One evening, Julia and I were at a bar downtown, tucked into a corner booth. She'd insisted we go out instead of hiding in a hotel, said it made her feel less like someone's dirty secret. The bar was dim, music low, couples scattered around us. She looked stunning in a black dress, her hair falling over her shoulders. Halfway through our second drink, a man approached the table, tall, good-looking, confident. He greeted Julia like an old friend, his hand lingering on her arm a moment too long. "Ben," she said, smiling. "This is Mark. We used to work together." Mark. The name tasted bitter. They chatted easily, laughing about some old project. I sat there, smiling politely, but inside, something ugly twisted. The way he leaned toward her, the way her eyes lit up, it clawed at me. When he finally left, I asked, too casually, "So, you two were close?" She gave me a look, half amused, half annoyed. "Don't start." "I'm not starting, just asking." "Ben," she sighed, "you're married. You don't get to be jealous." The words cut deep because they were true, but that didn't stop the jealousy. If anything, it made it worse. Jealousy works like rust. It spreads. Soon I was noticing every man who looked at her, every smile she returned, every message on her phone she didn't explain. And Julia wasn't innocent either. She started asking questions about Anna. Did she notice you were late last night? What does she think when you're gone on weekends? Do you still sleep with her? The last question always made my stomach knot. The truth was yes sometimes, out of guilt or duty or an instinct to keep up appearances. But admitting that to Julia felt like a betrayal, even though the real betrayal was happening in reverse. I don't want to share you, she whispered once, her head on my chest. The irony nearly made me laugh. She was sharing me whether she liked it or not. But I didn't laugh. I kissed her instead, promising things I couldn't deliver. At home, the walls were closing in. Anna grew more distant, more watchful. She'd ask, "Is everything okay?" with that quiet edge that meant she already knew the answer. One night, over dinner, she put down her fork and looked at me with steady eyes. "You're different," she said. "You've been somewhere else lately." Is there someone else? My heart slammed against my ribs. This was it. The moment. The chance to confess. And I lied. "No," I said quickly. "Of course not." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly, though I could tell she didn't believe me. She didn't press. And somehow that was worse than if she'd screamed. That night, I lay awake while she slept, guilt crashing over me like a wave. I told myself I should end it with Julia, cut it clean before it destroyed everything. But the thought of letting her go felt like ripping out a part of myself. So I didn't. Instead, I fell deeper. Julia began to talk about the future, not in concrete terms. She knew I wasn't leaving Anna anytime soon, but in small, wistful ways. "Imagine if we lived together," she'd say. Or, "What would it be like to wake up next to you every morning?" I'd play along, weaving fantasies neither of us fully believed. But part of me wanted it desperately. A life where I didn't have to sneak around, where I could love her in the daylight. Of course, the other part of me couldn't imagine blowing up my marriage, my reputation, my entire carefully built life. And so I stayed in limbo, half with Anna, half with Julia, whole with neither. The breaking point came one Saturday. Anna had gone to visit her sister, and I spent the day with Julia. We didn't go anywhere, didn't hide. We just stayed at her apartment, cooking, watching movies, making love in the quiet stretches between. It felt like a glimpse into that alternate life, the one where she was my partner, my home. But when I finally left, walking into the empty silence of my house, the weight of what I was doing hit me harder than ever. Anna's sweater lay draped over the couch, her book open on the table. Evidence of the life I was dismantling piece by piece. I sank onto the couch, head in my hands, and whispered to no one, "What the hell am I doing?" No answer came. Just the ticking of the clock and the hollow ache in my chest. By then, the affair wasn't a secret I was keeping. It was a second life I was living. And like all double lives, it was only a matter of time before the two collided. And when they did, none of us would walk away unscarred. Secrets don't stay buried forever. I told myself I could manage it, that I could balance both worlds if I was careful enough, if I lied well enough. But lies rot from the inside out, and eventually the stench leaks into everything. The first explosion came from Julia. We were in her apartment late at night. She'd cooked pasta, we'd shared wine, and for a while it felt easy. Domestic, even. But as we lay together afterward, her head on my chest, she said quietly, "I can't keep doing this." I stiffened. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she lifted her head, her eyes dark. "I can't keep being your secret. I love you, Ben, but I hate the way I only get the scraps of you. The lies, the hiding, the constant waiting for you to decide." Her words stabbed at me. "Julia." "No." She cut me off, sitting up. "Don't give me another excuse. I see it in your eyes. You want me, but you're too afraid to choose." She was right, and that was the worst part. "I can't just walk away from Anna," I said, my voice rising. "She's my wife. We have a life together. Do you love her?" The question hung in the air like a blade. "Yes," I said automatically. Then softer, "I think I do." "Think isn't enough," Julia snapped. "Not for me." Her anger shook me because beneath it was pain, the kind of pain only love can cause. She turned away, pulling the sheet around her. "Either you leave her," she whispered, "or you leave me." I didn't answer. Couldn't. That night, I went home hollow, my heart torn in two directions. Anna was asleep on the couch, her glasses still perched on her nose, papers spread around her. I stood there watching her, guilt crushing me. Love and betrayal tangled so tightly, I couldn't tell them apart. The second explosion came from Anna. It was a Sunday morning. She was making coffee while I sat at the table, scrolling through emails. My phone buzzed. Julia. A simple message. "I miss you." Anna's eyes flicked to the screen before I could turn it over. Silence. She set the coffee pot down a little too hard. "Who's Julia?" she asked, her voice calm but deadly. My blood ran cold. She works in the building," I stammered. "We're friends." Anna just stared at me. Her silence was worse than shouting. Finally, she said, "Give me your phone." I hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. Her face crumpled, not with rage but with devastation. She didn't even need to see the messages. She already knew. "How long?" she whispered. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. "A few months." Her hand flew to her mouth as if I'd struck her. Tears welled in her eyes. "My God, Ben." I reached for her, but she pulled back like my touch burned. "I trusted you," she said, her voice shaking. "I trusted us." The sight of her breaking was unbearable. I wanted to undo it, to take back every lie, every secret, but it was too late.
"I'm sorry," he whispered.
Useless words. Anna stared at me, tears streaming silently, then turned and walked out of the kitchen. I heard the bedroom door slam. I sat at the table, my head in my hands, knowing I destroyed the woman who had once been my whole world. After that, everything unraveled fast. Anna barely spoke to me. She moved into the guest room, stopped cooking for two, stopped kissing me goodbye. Her absence filled the house louder than any argument could. Meanwhile, Julia pressed harder. "Did you tell her? When are you leaving?" I couldn't bring myself to say I'd been caught, that Anna now looked at me like a stranger, that every night I felt like a ghost in my own home. Caught between them, I sank deeper into lies, trying to hold on to both, terrified of losing either. But the truth was, I was losing them both. The climax came one evening I'll never forget. I was at Julia's arguing. She wanted answers, timelines, promises. "Ben, I can't keep waiting," she shouted, pacing the room. "You keep saying you love me, but you go home to her every night. Do you know what that does to me?" "I'm trying," I shouted back. "Do you think this is easy for me?" She stopped, her eyes blazing. "If you loved me, you'd leave her. You'd have left already." The words struck like a slap, 'cause deep down I knew she was right. Before I could respond, my phone rang. "Anna." Julia's eyes flicked to the screen. "Answer it," she said coldly. I did. "Hello." Her voice was quiet, broken. "I packed a bag. I'm staying at my sister's. Don't call me." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, numb. The finality in her voice was like a death sentence. "What happened?" Julia asked softly. "She's gone," I whispered. For a moment, Julia's expression flickered between triumph and pity. Then she touched my arm. "Then it's us now." But instead of relief, all I felt was emptiness. The fallout was worse than I'd imagined. Anna filed for separation within weeks. Her lawyer contacted me, professional and cold. Friends stopped calling, some out of loyalty to her, others because they didn't know what to say. My parents' disappointment was palpable, though they tried to hide it. And Julia got what she said she wanted, but it wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined. Without the secrecy, without the stolen thrill, we were just two flawed people trying to build something out of the ruins. First, we tried. She moved in with me. We cooked dinners, went to movies, slept tangled in each other's arms. But cracks appeared quickly. She resented the way I mourned Anna, the way I flinched when I saw my ex's things, the way guilt shadowed my every smile. "You're not really here," Julia accused one night. "Half of you is still with her." Maybe she was right. Maybe it's impossible to build a future on the ashes of betrayal. The climax wasn't a single explosion. It was a slow collapse, each piece of my life crumbling until I was standing in the rubble, wondering how I'd gotten there. And the worst part? I had no one to blame but myself. They don't tell you this when you start an affair. Even if you get what you think you want, you rarely end up happy. You imagine a love story, two people finally free to be together. What you actually get is wreckage, with both of you crawling through the debris trying to pretend it's a home. After Anna left, Julia and I tried to live like a couple. For a while, it almost worked. She moved her clothes into my closet. Her perfume filled the bathroom. Her laughter echoed in rooms that had felt dead for years. She told me she was glad I'd finally chosen her. I tried to believe it, but guilt doesn't pack its bags and leave just because your wife does. It sits in the corner watching you. Every time I saw Anna's handwriting on an old shopping list, every time I noticed the dent in the couch where she used to sit, every time I woke in the night reaching for someone who wasn't there, it crushed me. Julia sensed it. Of course she did. One evening, as we sat in silence after dinner, she finally said, "You still love her, don't you?" I hesitated. That was answer enough. "I don't know what I feel anymore," I admitted. "All I know is that I broke her, and I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for that." Her eyes hardened. "And what about me? Do you regret me too?" "No," I said quickly, too quickly. But the truth was complicated. I loved Julia, her fire, her wit, the way she made me feel alive. But I also resented her for being the reminder of everything I'd lost. That contradiction poisoned us. The separation with Anna turned into divorce. She didn't scream, didn't beg. She just quietly signed the papers, her hands steady, her eyes colder than I'd ever seen. When I asked if we could talk, she said simply, "There's nothing left to say." That was when it hit me fully. I hadn't just cheated on my wife. I had killed the life we'd built together, and she wasn't going to give me a chance to resurrect it. Julia and I lasted another year, a year of passionate highs and brutal lows. We fought constantly, about my guilt, about her jealousy, about the shadow of Anna that never left the house no matter how many times Julia tried to chase it out. The final fight was ugly. She accused me of never truly choosing her. I accused her of pushing me when I was already falling. Words flew, venomous and unfiltered. At one point she shouted, "You'll die alone because you don't know how to love anyone without destroying them." The silence after that was the death rattle of us. She moved out 2 weeks later. I didn't stop her. So here I am, years later, sitting in the same house, though it feels emptier now than ever. Anna is remarried. Yes, I know, because I tortured myself by checking her social media. She looks happy, genuinely happy, with a man who probably doesn't lie to her every night. Julia, I don't know. Last I heard, she'd moved to another city. We haven't spoken since. And me? I'm still here. Alone. People sometimes ask me if I regret it. It's a cruel question because the answer is yes and no. I regret the lies, the hurt, the destruction. I regret watching Anna's heart break and knowing I was the one who shattered it. But do I regret Julia? No, because for a brief, burning time, she reminded me what it felt like to be alive. And that's the paradox of betrayal. You can love two people at once, but you can't keep them both. In the end, you lose everything. Why am I writing this? Maybe because I'm tired of carrying it alone. Maybe because some part of me hopes that putting it into words will finally quiet the storm in my chest. Or maybe because I want someone, anyone, to see me not just as a villain, but as a man who made choices, selfish, cowardly, reckless choices, but choices born from longing, not malice. If you take anything from my confession, let it be this: passion can feel like salvation, but if you chase it at the cost of trust, you'll end up with ashes. I learned that too late. And now, all I have left are memories. Of Anna's quiet smile, of Julia's fiery laugh, of the man I once was and the man I became. This is my truth, my failure, my story, and maybe, just maybe, my warning.